So as I said, you were personally targeted by U.S. sanctions, including a ban from entering the United States. You were all over the press, so I think people know about your case. But just for those who may not remember, could you please tell us a little bit more about what exactly you experienced, how you experienced this situation, both on a personal and professional level?
Sure. So it was the night before Christmas when the news broke that there was a travel ban on 5 European and UK citizens. And two of them were myself and my CEO colleague Annalena von Hodenberg. We are running the organization Hate Aid, and we are advocating for better platform regulation and platform accountability. And they basically made the announcement through the State Department. There was an official press release that was not mentioning the name, but then, like 1 hour later, the Undersecretary of State, Sarah Rogers, came out on X and announced the names of the five individuals with a short biography. And Sarah Rogers was directly referring to our work around the Digital Services Act, around platform accountability, and also to the official status of Hate Aid as a trusted flagger organization under the Digital Services Act. And of course, we were in shock. We were definitely expecting that there might be some trouble when we tried to travel to the US, so we wouldn't even try. But this very public announcement on Christmas,
your name coming out.
Yeah, it felt like really weird. And of course, on a personal level, it was a shock. There was all this public attention on us, which of course can be good for a non-profit organization.
But it's intimidating.
It is intimidating, and I always used to say it was our biggest shitstorm and the biggest love storm at the very same time, which felt a little bit weird, because depending on where you look, there was so much solidarity and so much hate and threats on the other hand.
Your case really illustrates how decisions taken outside of Europe can really directly affect European citizens and organizations. What does your situation reveal about extraterritorial reach of digital and political power today?
We can definitely see on this example that the US are testing the boundaries. Of course, like civil society actors are just a test, and they want to see what's happening. And if nothing is happening, which is actually what was taking place, then it might be MEPs the next time, or EPs of the member states. It might be officials working for the regulators the next time. That might be sanctioned by the government if they don't like the policies in Europe. And this is what was also so unexpected, that this pressure was so directly, and it also came a few days after the first fine under the Digital Services Act was put against X. So we can see it as a direct threat. If you want to regulate big tech platforms in Europe, then there will be more actions like this, like whatever.
You will be punished.
Yeah, you will be punished, and also like personally punished, because the goal was, of course, also to send a signal to other people working in the DSA ecosystem, to regulators, but also to governments, to think about it twice if they want to put regulation on big tech platforms.
Now, beyond the symbolic aspect, what are the very concrete consequences of such a form of censorship or sanction? For example, does it affect access to, I'm thinking about payment services or digital platforms or international partnerships?
First of all, we are now labeled as radical activists. This was the wording of the State Department, and also of a weaponized organization, whatever that means. So this is, of course, something where you have to be afraid of consequences. We lost a few funders because of this, because they say it's just too dangerous to be associated with you.
Yeah.
But of course, we are also afraid that there might be further sanctions, because this, for now, is just a travel ban. But the language that the State Department used was very threatening. They were talking about sanctions. They were even throwing around Magnitsky sanctions, which is the sanctions that they put in place for Russian oligarchs, which would mean financial sanctions to be on the OFAC list. It would also mean that you have no access to US service providers at all. And of course, we are running an organization with 50 people, and we also are afraid of personal consequences. I cannot imagine a life without a Visa card, but I'm pretty sure there is a life without a Visa card. So we will figure out everything when it happens, but we are preparing because we see a responsibility also for our employees and also for the work that we are doing. We are assisting victims of online violence, and they need us. So we need to prepare for the worst case scenario. We are taking care of our financial situation. We're trying to diversify our bank accounts to be not as vulnerable with only one bank institution. And also, we are trying to get away from US service providers as fast as possible because we don't want to be blackmailed with access to Microsoft and other services.
So we can, when listening to your testimony, we can really understand how much it illustrates our dependencies on U.S. and Chinese also dependencies. In this case, it's U.S. But where do you see the most critical vulnerabilities today? Is it infrastructure? Is it platforms? Is it compliance mechanisms? All of the above?
I think it's the service providers, because we all rely on our IT infrastructure. You cannot run a company and also not a non-profit organization without having these infrastructures. And we store our data there, also very sensitive data. We saw in some occasions that big tech platforms were subpoenaed in the US, and that very sensitive documents, even with like real names of people working in institutions and in civil society organizations, were published by the House Judiciary Committee in the US. So there is a very specific threat that comes from these service providers, which is why we should all think about our dependence on them and their service. But also the financial systems are definitely a threat, because when you are associated as a terrorist organization, as a radical activist, then you need to be afraid that your bank accounts might be terminated and that you have no place to go with your money, because the banks are afraid to be thrown out of the SWIFT system. And so you might be cut off.
What does your situation tell us about the balance between fighting disinformation on one hand and protecting fundamental rights for freedom of expression? And is there a risk of geopolitical instrumentalization of these issues?
There is definitely instrumentalization happening, but of course it's always a question of the narrative. So what we are doing is we are protecting those affected from online violence, we are empowering them, we are helping them to stay online and not be silenced by threats. So this is no censorship. What we are doing is we are trying to create a balance on the internet, and we are trying to guarantee equal access to the public discussions that are taking place on social media these days. And so we really have to, as Europeans, we really have to think about how we frame the regulation that we are putting in place, because the online platform regulation, the Digital Services Act, is not about censorship. It's not only about removing illegal content. It's about breaking the arbitrariness that big tech platforms put on us, because everything that counted for them for a very long time, for 2 decades almost, was their own rules that they were putting on our public discourse. And what we are trying to do now is to install democratic values on the internet to make sure that you can fight back, that we have user rights and all these things. And that's why I think we should also wake up a little bit and think about how we frame what we are doing here.
I think the wake up, we've heard it quite a lot since yesterday. What lessons should European organizations, but also policymakers, take away from your case?
Yeah. We should think about the digital sovereignty. This was also discussed a lot already, but we should not rely too much on the IT infrastructure. And what I really, really wish for is that we strongly enforce the laws that we have in Europe, because this is, in my opinion, the only way to show that we are serious about it and that we cannot be blackmailed with threats of tariffs that are not even in a relation to online platform regulation, but that are still used as a threat material. So I think we should be very confident about the rules that we put in place, because they are not a mistake. It's a mistake to not have rules at all.
Is one of your messages the fact that it happened to you, but it can happen to any of us?
Yeah. I think there was a reason that it happened to us, because we were somehow put in the spotlight of the US government a while before it happened. But still, it can happen to anyone working in the platform regulation ecosystem. And as I said, it can also happen to MEPs, for example, or to stakeholders that work for the regulators, because they're also involved in the alleged censorship that the US is claiming. And of course, it can happen to anyone. We are just a symbol. This is not about us. This is not an attack on to citizens, to people, to women. It is an attack on European regulation, after all. And this is what we were also stressing from the very beginning, which of course is a mechanism to also draw the attention away from the people, because I mean, there is already a long list of people that are not allowed to travel in the US because of their nationality. And of course, we are now 2 white women with a European citizenship, and of course there is a bigger outcry because of this. But the fact that we were chosen because of our status as a trusted flagger, which is a legal status under the Digital Services Act. I was also a member of the board of the Digital Services Coordinator that was implemented by the German Parliament. So we have official roles that have a democratic legitimization. This is why it's not about us. It might not happen to anybody, but it definitely sends a signal to everyone.
And it's happening in this sector, but it could also, with time, happen in other sectors as well. Joséphine Ballon, thank you so much for coming and sharing your testimony here at the INCYBER Forum. It was truly a pleasure. Thank you, indeed.
Thanks for having me.
Please.